Oh, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I was joking this morning. I've had a week of annual leave, so I'm trying to make sure that my brain is back in work mode and I remember who I am and what I do and what all my passwords are. But the morning so far is going well, so hopefully it will continue. Yes, I'm Ella Bunting. I'm the Participation Officer for Children's Services. So my role is very, very lucky to say really broad. So I get to work with lots and lots of different colleagues, lots of children, young people that receive a service from North Somerset. I'm primarily working with care experienced children, whether they are, they've now left care or they're currently in care. We do that running, our children in care councils. We have our care leavers forum. And I'm very lucky because I get to work across lots of different teams as well, although I do sit under quality assurance and safeguarding. So Language That Cares, I was actually saying this morning that Language That Cares was first introduced to me by one of our care experienced young people in North Somerset. She was one of the first young people I met when I started working just over 2 years ago. And she was absolutely fantastic. She's doing her master's at the moment in Brighton, and she had been doing a lot of work in Brighton, North Somerset and Gloucester around TACT. I'd actually never heard of them before. My background before children's social care was education. And I just thought this is absolutely amazing. And it's something that we're doing all the time, isn't it? We're always talking about children, writing about children, we're talking to families. So it just felt as though it would be something that would be really relevant, in all sort of aspects of not only work, but sort of our life in general, really. So I'm going to share my screen and hope that everything goes swimmingly and get started. So bear with me a minute. I get where things need to be. Everyone can see my screen all right.
We can see it, but it's quite small, Ella, for me. I don't know if you can make it.
Brilliant. Let's get presenting, and hopefully, how's this size-wise?
That hasn't changed. We can't see a full slide view.
Let's have a look. Let's see this. How about this? Is that any better?
Yes.
Brilliant. So the impact of language. So obviously I said my name's Ella Bunting. So I often do this piece of work with a colleague of mine called Beth Swan. She was hoping to be with us this morning, but she's not been feeling too well. But Beth is our young director, so I work really closely with her, and a lot of the work that we do is around language. So it's going to be a bit of a sort of whistle-stop tour today. We're going to be looking at the impact of language, some survey results from our children and young people, what it is that they're telling us, some stats and stigmas, and of course some best practice. So first of all, I'm going to ask everyone this question. So if you could read a book about your life that had been written by everyone that you have ever met, would you want to read it? So if I can just get everyone to pop in the chat yes or no, that would be really useful. Oh, what am I doing? There we go. No. What's going on? Computer is saying no today. There we go. So if you could read a book about your life that had been written by everyone you've ever met, would you want to read it? We've got a yes, we've got a no. I'm going to put mine in there because when I was asked this question, it was a yes. So I'll just give it a second. So just pop in the chat, yes or no. Okay. So when I was asked this question, my answer straight away was yes, because I'm really nosy. So I was like, oh gosh, yeah, that would be amazing. I get to read everything about all this, you know, these good interactions. And Beth, my colleague, without skipping a beat, said, absolutely not. I would definitely not want to read that. That would be terrible. And she really made me think, actually, my sort of train of thought had instantly gone to the positive. So I was thinking all of those really nice positive interactions that I've had with people throughout my life, I'd really want to hear what they said. Beth, as a care experienced young person, said, well, actually, I wouldn't want that. And it really, really made me think about, you know, that falling out I had in year 8, or this person I had a run-in with, I don't know, can't think where, you know, and I just thought, gosh, yeah, actually, that could be really, really interesting. And it made us think about children and young people moving into adulthood and potentially being in a position where they can access information about themselves. So we know under the Freedom of Information Act that you can access anything about yourself, whether it's medical records or specifically for my line of work, it would be, you know, all of the information, case notes, case summaries. And actually, we know many young people that have done this, and it has been a really, really difficult experience. Reading things that have been written by professionals with very interesting language choices, not the most positive language choices. And it's had a huge impact on the individuals reading it, not only about the experiences that they had and the memories that they have from those periods of time, but actually about how they view themselves now as an adult. So the next thing, I'm going to ask a few questions, and I would just, again, just do feel free to use the chat function. I'm just going to ask people to write a yes or a no. So question number 1 is, at any point in your life, child, teenager, adulthood, have you ever been described as difficult? We've got a few coming in, some yeses and no. Mine was a yes for sure. Okay, same again. And the next question is, at any point in your life, have you ever been described as out of control? Okay. So, next question is, have you ever been described as someone that misuses drugs or alcohol? Okay, and last question, have you ever been described as sexually aggressive? Okay, so the reason that those questions specifically were asked is children in North Somerset have been described using that language by a professional or someone that they recognise as a friend or a family member. So to give a little bit more context to that, the person described as difficult had actually had an argument with their foster parent about food. The person described as out of control had skipped an afternoon at school to go to the cinema. The person described as someone misusing drugs and alcohol was 16 at the time. They'd been to a party, they drank some beer and they had smoked cannabis for the first time. And the person that was described as sexually aggressive had told their teacher to F-word off. So, as I said, these words, you know, difficult, out of control, misusing drugs or alcohol, sexually aggressive, had all been chosen by professionals or a trusted adult in North Somerset to describe a child. So everyone here was under the age of 16. And again, I think it was so shocking, I think, to sort of myself and my colleague, that we would think about using these words to describe essentially a child. And I think as well, for me, it went so much further than just that. I was thinking, actually, as a professional, let's say I'm looking at education, health and care plan, and I can see on that plan, before I've met this young person, that they've been described as difficult or as out of control, misusing drugs or alcohol, sexually aggressive. I have in my head then got a picture of this person that I've never met. And actually thinking about this sort of mini activity just gets us to really think about the context behind that. Actually, was a child difficult for having an argument with their foster parent about food? Or were they just expressing themselves? You know, is a young person out of control by skipping school? Is someone misusing drugs because they go to a party at 16? And specifically this one, the person that described this person was a teacher, and they were asked about it. And they sort of justified it by saying, well, the F word can be used to describe, you know, sexual activity, so that's why it's sexually aggressive. And that phrase is aggressive phrase. So that was the sort of justification. But actually what's happening for that child is the stigma that's going to come alongside that. And we thought, my goodness, this is something that we really need to be thinking about, because words carry such power. So everything that we do, everything we say, everything we write about, it doesn't go away. You know, I remember, I'm sure we all do, you know, conversations from school, whether it was with a teacher or a friend or a, you know, whoever. There are moments in my mind where I think, oh, that person called me this, you know, and it carries with you, I think, all the way through. So we thought, actually, you know, we're having all these conversations amongst ourselves, and it's really, really making us think about our own life experiences, our practice, but actually, what is it that that our children and young people are saying? So we asked them. So this specifically is children with North Somerset, children receiving a service in North Somerset. And we asked them, have you ever read any documents about yourself that have been written by other people? So anything, you know, school reports, education, health and care plans, behaviour report. And they all had, at some point throughout their life, child or adult, they had all read something. We asked them, did you understand all of the language used? 66% said no, and 33% said, well, actually, I only understood some of it. So instantly we were thinking, oh gosh, we haven't had a single person say yes. And I think, you know, certainly when we're thinking about documents and something that is going to be for a child to look at, for a child to review, if they're not understanding any of it, then something's probably not going as well as it should. So we then went on to ask them to describe the language used in documents that they have read about themselves. So just picked a few out here. We have professional words, too technical, harrowing, which always really, really sticks with me, because that is, you know, I'm a parent myself, and if either of my children ever described something about themselves as harrowing, I would, you know, be absolutely heartbroken for them. When reading about yourself, what effect does language have on you? So someone put, well, none, actually, it doesn't really impact me at all. Another said they Google words that they don't understand. And someone else said it makes them uncomfortable and annoyed and anxious. So we thought, right, okay, well, we need to do a little bit of work here then. I do have a video. I'm really, really hoping it's going to play, and I'm not going to have any issues with sound. So bear with me a second. Let's see if this plays ball for me. Right, I'm going to press play and hope that the sound works. If it doesn't, I will pop the link in the chat, and it will be there then to watch. It's only just over 2 minutes long.
There's no sound coming through, Ella.
Of course there's not. Of course there's no sound. That'd be far too straightforward, wouldn't it, on a morning? What I'll do, it's a short 2-minute video. It was created by some care experienced children from a local authority in Ireland. And it was just really interesting to hear them talk about words that have been used to describe either you know, situations that they're in or experiences that they've had. I will pop the link in the chat. As I said, it's only 2 minutes long, definitely worth a watch. Really, really interesting. As a couple of examples, some of the things that they talked about was lack. So looked after child, which I have to say is something that we don't use anymore. But they did talk about that and what that meant, and they were saying that it felt like it described them as being lacking in something. The other word was placement. You know, why can they not just call it home? You know, if they were talking to their peers at school, they wouldn't say, oh, I'm going to go to my placement after school. It would be home. And contact was another one. So thinking about time with their family, they would just say, well, I'm going to see my family. It's family time. It's not contact. I don't want to say that to my mates at school. That's really weird. It makes me stand out a lot. So as I said, just a couple of minutes, but yes, if you do find some time at some point, it would be, yeah, it is certainly worth a watch. Okay, so I'm hoping everyone can still see this okay. This is a word cloud that myself and my colleague created from words that we'd read in case notes on children's files in North Somerset. And this isn't a word cloud to say this is wrong, because of course it's not. We need words like feedback, emergency, harm, consent, you know, respite. You know, these are all words that we use in our language, and they are obviously going to be very, very relevant for lots of things that we're going to be writing about, describing. I think the reason that we've looked at this is because actually there are words in there that really make us think about the understanding of that word. And I think as professionals, any child or young person that you're working with, you are going to know best. So you are going to know the right way to communicate with them, the language that is appropriate for them, you know, with their age, with their level of understanding. And it's just about always having that at the forefront of your mind. So if we're using words like statutory, conference, review, safeguarding, are we making sure that the children understand what these words mean? You know, it's up to us to sort of have those conversations in an age appropriate way to make sure that actually even words that we know we have to use as professionals are being described in a way that children can understand. Another really great one is acronyms. When I started a couple of years ago, I remember sitting in meetings and literally having to nudge my colleague and just go, what does that mean? I don't know what this word means. And it's unavoidable, isn't it? You know, as professionals, there are going to be lots of acronyms that we use. Again, it's just about making sure that everyone understands. And I think for me, it always prompts the question, you know, should we make the assumption that everyone understands or no one understands? And for me, it's always got to be the latter. Because, I mean, again, you know, if I was a child or a young person and my teacher had said to me at school, right, are we good to go? Do we understand what's been said? Do we understand what we need to do? The people pleaser in me just says yes every time, whether I understood or not. So I think, again, it's just thinking about what it means, the context it's used, and the relevance. So, this is just a quick one. It's not an act. I'm not going to make anyone do anything. It's just something to think about quietly to ourselves. We have a 9-year-old Zara, and the following words, detrimental, sexualized, and abscond, thinking about how we would describe those words in a sentence in a way that Zara would understand. We know as professionals and as advocates for the children that we work with and that we support that we can be what's known as, you know, interpreters. So we can translate for our children. And I don't mean, you know, literally language translation, although there are many people that are very, very skilled and qualified to do that. I'm not one of them, unfortunately. I only know one language. But thinking about those, the sort of translation in terms of, okay, who is the person that's going to be there for that child to help them understand this task at hand, or this piece of work, this paragraph, this parents' evening, you know, document, whatever it might be. It's thinking about what if you as a professional that knows that child through and through, great relationship, you know, really, really great communication. If you weren't there, if you're not the person that's there to translate for them and interpret, you know, something that they're trying to understand or read, who is there to do it for them? Okay, so this actually was brought to my attention by the young person that I mentioned earlier on. Our care experience young person who is, I think I said, doing their masters in Brighton at the moment. So again, just using the chat function, I'm not going to put anybody on the spot, it's far too early for that. For those that feel comfortable, could you share words that have been used either to you directly or to describe you that have stayed with you into adulthood? So we'll just take a few minutes, just anything that you can think of, words that have been used to describe you at any point in your life, just pop them in the chat. I will kick us off with the word dramatic, which has been used to describe me. Oh, we're getting some in. Thank you to those that are popping something in. I'm going to continue adding mine as well. Thank you to everyone that's writing in. We're getting quite a few in now. It's brilliant. Just give it a few more seconds. Amazing. Thank you to everyone that's been popping all of these great things in the chat. What I always find really interesting about this activity, and I certainly do it myself every time, is that no one ever writes anything positive. So when, you know, we sort of introduce this and say, right, you know, anything that you remember being said to you or a word used to describe you, pop it in. You know, at no point do we say just the negatives, and yet the negative words are only the ones that we ever see. So again, I'm not going to pinpoint anyone. I can use my own examples. You know, I've been described as dramatic, a chatterbox, I'm easily led, and what I don't remember as clearly are all the really positive things that have been said about me and written about me. Not to say they've left me, of course, we all remember the good and the bad. But I think it's fair to say, although anyone is welcome to challenge me on this, a lot of the time it's the negative language and the negative descriptions of ourselves that are the ones that stick with us and that go through into adulthood. and it can be very, very difficult to shake that. I think for me personally, and certainly for the children and the young people that I have worked with and that I have spoken to, they feel as though it has really shaped they are going into adulthood. So being described as someone who is challenging and difficult and aggressive has sort of become part of their personality because they have just heard it so much. And I think that whilst we recognise as professionals and as adults that, you know, absolutely we have to deliver difficult truths sometimes. Of course we do. It's part of the work that we do. You know, we've all potentially had an experience ourselves, or I know certainly, you know, a friend or myself has gone to do the school run or the preschool run and oh, can I you just sign this incident form? You know, it happens, of course it does, we're all human beings. But again, I think it always comes back to us as professionals and how we deliver those difficult truths. You know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with being factual about anything at all, but it's about making sure that our opinion doesn't cloud the facts, because labels stick, and the stigma that can come as a result of those labels can be very, very difficult to shift, both for children, young people, for adults, but also as professionals. You know, there's so much stigma, isn't there, around you know, words that we use, so many connotations, and it's really difficult to shift that because it's you know, it is part of the human language, it's part of our culture. But again, I think it just always emphasizes to me the responsibility that we have to make sure that the words that we're using are accurate, they are factual, and they are fair. This is an activity, so I've done this activity myself. Similarly, we've sort of kind of just done it in the chat, where we've asked some children and young people to do exactly what you've just done, put words in, you know, something that has been described, the way in which they've been described before. Again, as I said, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but it's never the positives that come through when we do an activity like that. You know, aggressive, manipulative, out of control, you know, to use some examples from our group earlier on, you know, shy, emotional, dramatic, overthinker, not trying hard enough, non-achiever. You know, they're really, really difficult words for us to process, both as children, but also I think into adulthood, it makes it really difficult. We always find when we do these activities with our children and young people that the paper is full within about a minute and a half. And I always find it really eye-opening. It's also a really good constant reminder for me and my practice when I'm working, you know, to always sort of challenge myself about what I'm writing as well. So what can we do? So language that cares, as we sort of touched on earlier on, was introduced by TACT, the Adolescent and Children's Trust. So they worked collaboratively with a group of, I think it was about 10 local authorities in England. And they worked directly with children and young people to come up with a glossary of terms to replace the words that they didn't like. I do have that, and I will pop that in the chat for everyone, just to have as a bit of browsing time. What I will say is that these glossaries are never a one-size-fits-all. Again, whenever you're working with children, you're the professionals, you know best. So you are going to know the words that some children might prefer, others might dislike. We do these glossaries a lot. I do these a lot at work. For that exact reason, because there isn't a one-size-fits-all. You know, it's about not shying away from the language, having those conversations with people that you work with, and identifying, you know, preference and what they prefer. But certainly some of them here we think are probably worth just a bit of evolution. So aggressive, you know, are we thinking about them being assertive and determined? You know, Is it that they're disruptive, or actually is it that they're being expressive and maybe they need some support? Are they a loner? Are they shy? Are they independent? I'm not going to read all of them. Below average is another great one that we see a lot. You know, is it that they're below average, which feels really harsh? Or is it that actually they're learning and working at their own pace? Challenging. Challenging is a word that we use, but actually is the child challenging? Or is it that I'm finding that behaviour challenging? So it's always thinking about what we're doing. People, children, same as us, we all have bad days. I'm sure there are days that my partner would describe me as being incredibly difficult. But actually, in reality, I'm just having a rough day. Our children and young people are no exception to that at all. So, as I said, this is just a few sort of examples there around sort of developing a new glossary of terms. I will pop the TACT glossary in the chat. I know that our education colleagues at North Somerset are creating a glossary for themselves. There's also a glossary being developed for children with special educational needs, you know, thinking about, you know, disorder, condition, you know, things like that. Again, without repeating myself too much, we always know, I think, our children, you know, that we're working with and what they're going to prefer. Here's a few examples from the TACT glossary. So, abscond, just say run away or go missing. Birth, parents, biological parents, the preference is parents, family, mum, tummy mummy. Care leaver, care experienced. That's something that we've adapted at North Somerset, having spoken to the children that we work with, the care experienced young people that we support. Care experienced or expert in care has absolutely shone as being the preferred term. And again, we know that language evolves. Of course it does. There are words and pieces of language that we would never dream of saying now that decades ago would have been part of the normal sort of vocabulary. So, you know, we appreciate that things change and evolve over time. So, some helpful tools. So this is a word bank. I love a word bank, probably because my previous experience was education, so I use word banks all the time. I find word banks are actually really, really useful, and obviously it's going to be relevant. It would need to be relevant to the sector of work that you're in. But we find that having a word bank, you know, even just popping it as an appendix or, you know, an additional document that goes alongside, you know, a letter or a review document, something, it just really helps people understand, certainly thinking about those wonderful acronyms that we know we're going to use, but it just helps eliminate the assumption that people know, you know it. So again, things like EAT, you know, CIC, children in care, PA, personal advisor, PEPs, EHCPs. So yes, I love a good word bank, and I would definitely say that for any pieces of work that I've done with children and young adults, the use of a word bank has been really positively received. We've been doing a lot of work on reviewing strategies and reviewing policies that we have, and it doesn't take long just to go through, you know, just a few minutes, sometimes only 5-10 minutes, just to pull out some things and do a little word bank ahead of the activity that we're doing. Has always gone down really, really well. So at the start, we were looking at some statistics from the children and young people that we were working with when we were talking about language. Those statistics were gained about a year, possibly 18 months ago. And so we thought we'd ask them again and see if anything has changed since implementing language that cares as a fundamental in North Somerset Council. So it, you know, absolutely being part of all of our practice day in, day out. children and young people are now telling us we have a voice. You can see staff trying their hardest to change. We feel listened to, we're being heard. Feels like we're being more appreciated now than we used to. So really, really positive things that are coming from our children and our young people. Certainly far, far more positive than words like harrowing and having to Google things that they don't understand. When we're, you know, it's never going to be perfect. It's always going to be an ongoing piece of, I say piece of work, but just probably more an ongoing part of all of our practice, thinking about language and how that evolves all the time. You know, as I said, I don't think everyone is completely there yet, but actually being open to have those conversations and just think about our practice, you know, before we write that document, before we send that email. Something I always ask myself if I'm ever doing a piece of work, whether it's for a colleague or for a child or a young person or a family that I'm working with, you know, would I be offended if I received this? Would I be offended if I received this on behalf of my children? Would I be offended if a family member or a friend of mine received this? And I always use those 3 questions to really just take, not long, a few seconds, a little proofread. Actually, am I describing the facts or am I describing my opinion? And it's little things like that that are going a long way, I think, at the moment. So what else can we do? More parent, less corporate. That comes out a lot of the time. We are all corporate parents in the line of work that we're all in. Whether or not we're talking specifically about children with care experience or not, you know, when we are finding ourselves in roles where children are receiving a service from us, whether that's medicine, healthcare, education, you know, nurseries, preschools, childminding, you know, we are taking on that role as a corporate parent to that child. So it's always thinking about, again, back to those questions. If this was my child, if this was my niece or nephew, if this was my mum or my brother or my aunt, how would I feel? You know, we know that languages are evolving all the time, but ultimately the work that we're all doing is all for the same reason, really. We want to safeguard children. We want to provide them with safe and supportive environments. And, you know, ultimately we want absolutely the best for them all the time. So in terms of the ways in which we work, you know, we know that's going to change, but certainly not why we're doing it. I think, yes, I was right. I think that is all from me. So thank you so much for listening to me waffle on. I hope it wasn't too much information overload. Let me just get back to my screen so I can see everyone again. There we go. Have I stopped sharing? Are we back on track?
Yeah, we are. Thank you, Ella. Thanks ever so much, Ella. I mean, I think lots to think about, you know, for us as a team and us as a sector about this ongoing conversation. As you said, there are various glossaries that are being drawn up. I think we are consistently looking at the language that we use, you know, through our SEND work, through IPPs. You know, I think we're sort of really shifted that behaviour management lens over to self and co-regulation, but it's taking time. So I think that view of actually just thinking with the young children with whom we're working and that parental connection that we've got, really thinking about the language, perhaps, you know, as an ongoing action from this, you know, pulling out, or you're going back to our staff teams and perhaps looking at 1 or 2 IPPs, or looking at where we've had either children in care at their records or what we used to call our behaviour management plans, just sharing those at staff meeting and just really drilling down into what language did we use, what connotation would that have if this child was reading this when they asked for freedom of information with their records when they were 16, what were we saying about them when they were 3? You know, is that there is always that area, that essence of we have to be realistic. If we're talking about, you know, children that are having some difficulties, you know, we can't gloss over, but we have to look at being realistic, but kind, factual and fair. So some of the, you know, it's an ongoing, this is going to be an ongoing debate as language changes over time. I think just some of the things that something that we've gone over and over again as a sector. And again, it's the devil in the detail, isn't it? It's things like that key person. Sometimes people still use key worker. So again, we often challenge the sector to say, what's the connotation about a worker versus a person with our children? Would you rather have your child being looked after and educated by a worker or by a person? One of the ones that we've been challenging, again, this is more around the sort of professionalism within our sector, is often we call we're sort of affectionately, because we tend to be female within our profession, is often that teams are referred to as the girls. I'll go and ask the girls. And actually, how professional is that? You know, are we, you know, would a teacher at a school say, would a head teacher say, I'm just going to ask, could the girls and boys come to this about their teachers? So, you know, we're constantly looking at that language. And I think some of those, you know, those messages today about how it feels and people being really brave and sharing their own things that stick.
Absolutely.
You know, just reminds you how powerful it is. Certainly it stirred up some feelings of mine, and I'm sure it did with other people, you know, again, people very bravely sharing it. We remember it now. That might have been said when we were 5, 6, 7, 8 teenagers, but those were the feelings that were dredged up. So it's important stuff to have this conversation. Any questions while we've got Ella? Anything that you either want to unmute and ask or pop in the chat about the session today, or anything you feel you'd like us to be doing moving forward more around this? No. Okay, well, I said you're going to you've popped the video, I think, in chat, haven't you, Ella, that people can watch?
Yes, so I'll pop in the tact glossary, the video, and anything else that people think might be useful. I think it's always the way, isn't it? You know, it's everyone here is highly skilled, highly experienced, very, very good at what they do. And I think it's trying to find that balance, isn't it? Where we're not saying no one's using the right language and this is PC gone mad. You know, it's definitely not about that. It's just, you know, thinking all the time. I think, you know, as you rightly said, Gail, about, you know, the implications that some language can have. You know, it's not about shying away from what is actually going on. You know, we do need to describe and write about things that sometimes aren't as positive. You know, that's the nature of the job, isn't it? And it's not about saying you can't write about this because it might hurt someone's feelings. It's not that at all. No. It's just about thinking about, you know, always being factual and, you know, using the language that appropriately matches the facts. Yeah. So, yeah. Yes. I will. So Pip Hesketh, who is our Director of Education, I will reach out to her and see how she's getting on with the glossaries that she was developing. I don't know if anyone knows of Shelley Smith as well. She's the Participation and Engagement Officer in North Somerset for our Children with SEND. She's been doing a really big piece of work on a glossary. So I will give that a really good chase and see if I can track down some more glossaries and get those popped in as well.
Wonderful. And remember, this is always dynamic. So if we send out glossaries and you have some thoughts around, actually, I've always felt uncomfortable with that word. Things like that, lack, isn't it? For years, looked after children was lack, and we just kind of used it and hadn't thought about those potential connotations. So, you know, if there's things that you're thinking through your work, through your conversations with parents, through your report writing, that you're starting to go, actually, I now use that word. I now use self and co-regulation instead of behaviour management. I now use and finding it difficult rather than challenging. You know, do feed that back, because this is in, you know, it's always more powerful if it's in co-production, but we'll certainly share those glossaries as a starting point. And I know we're always looking through our IPP workshops, etc. And Sarah Evans is here with us today around thinking about the language that we use when we're writing reports about children. So this is an ongoing conversation. But thank you very much for your input today. Ella, we'll get everything sent out that people have asked for, and thank you everybody as ever for your precious time.